electricity market. We entered the market rules for electricity this year. We did progress on building the energy line, high voltage energy line, Chisinau-Vulcănești. Renewables, we are seeing a boom of using the renewables, 6 or even 7-fold increase of the renewables capacity installed. So these are some of the highlights of last year. This year, we're equally determined to move with our priorities. Unbundling of the gas market, it's something that should happen and will happen in summer. The oil stock reserves law, it's something that we are planning to vote this year. Also, we need to advance in terms of building the Chisinau-Vulcănești high voltage line. It's a fundamental strategic goal for us to get rid for good of the Russian energy dependence. Also, renewables, we're going this year to launch an auction for large volume of renewables. Also, what we would also love to, some of the laws that we will also vote, it's related to labeling of the products with energy impact. It's programmed for this year. I mentioned the oil reserves. And last but not least, we are planning to adopt the law on energy efficiency fund for residential buildings. It's an area where we need to advance, and obviously, your help in requesting support from the European Union will be highly valuable. And also, with your help, we would love to, would like to join the common mechanism of purchasing gas, of European mechanism. It's something that we really keen, and we would love your support in doing this. I will stop here. If any of my colleagues would, maybe you can, or if you want to add something, and then you can just go ahead and we'll have just a conversation. Thank you. Mulțumesc.
Good afternoon and welcome to Moldova. My name is Ina Coșeru and I am the Deputy Chair of the Committee on Environment in the Parliament of the Republic of Moldova. It's a pleasure to meet you in person, and we hope to cooperate more dynamically in the future, including on all the obligations we have in environment and climate change related to energy sector, and transposition of regulations and directives into our legislation. So first of all, I would like to mention that, and you know already, that we have a new ministry in the government of the Republic of Moldova, which is dedicated strictly to the energy sector. Now it is in the process of formation, and we hope this process will be short and we will hire experts in the ministry, and we will be able to face all the engagements that we have for this sector. So as my colleague Radu was saying previously, it is important to mention that energy efficiency is one of our priorities, and the Ministry of Environment now is in the process of reforming the agency on energy efficiency, and this will be one of the main instruments of gathering financing for energy efficiency and renewable projects, because, as Radu said, we will increase production from renewable sources with a target of 27% by 2030, and with 155 megawatt capacity allocated for the auctions to be organized in 2023, and by 2025 for 400 megawatt capacity. So we have ambitious targets, and this needs to cope with the capacities of the country, and here we really are looking forward for the reformed agency and for the financing from development partners in order to be able to start the financing of these projects. As for 2023, it is important to mention that we have a project on energy efficiency of public buildings in the Republic of Moldova, It is a project of 75 million euro financial support from EBRD and European Investment Bank, and this year we started the energetic audit of 9 public institutions. These are the hospitals, and in 2024 we will be launching projects on energy efficiency. As for the residential sector, it is very important, as I said, to support the residential sector and the energy efficiency projects from the Agency for Energy Efficiency and Renewables, and vote for the legal framework that will support the operation of the Fund on Energy Efficiency, the National Fund on Energy Efficiency and Renewables. And for this moment, we have some smaller projects which will support condominiums and energy efficiency projects in these condominiums. For example, we have a project which is run by the Ministry of Energy and some civil society organizations, supported by the Netherlands, and it will be performing an energetic audit of 10 condominiums, and then during the next period of time, 2024, some of them will be selected for projects in energy efficiency. From 1 to 3 condominiums will be selected for these pilot projects. But you understand that we need more, of course, for the residential sector, and this is a very ambitious target for the next years. This is why during the last meeting of the Parliamentary Committee, Parliamentary Association Committee, which was held in Brussels in spring this year, we agreed to have an event organized in Brussels with the participation of MPs from the European Parliament, from the representatives of the European Commission, which work in energy sector, environment sector, transport sector, climate sector, so all the DGs related to these fields. Experts who are supporting Ukraine in the energy crisis and who will be invited for this event to talk about the priorities of Moldova. We would like to dedicate this event to energy efficiency first of all, but we are now developing with the Ministry of Energy a list of priorities which will be discussed during this event, and when we will have like a better understanding of this event, we will send you the information also, so you will be aware of what will be going on during this event. And I have also a list of regulations and directives, especially related to climate change, but we can discuss this with you, because some of them are already transposed partially in our legislation. Some of them are now discussed, like, for example, introducing carbon pricing in the energy community, and we are now working on the draft regulation on monitoring, reporting and verification of greenhouse gas emissions from stationary installations. So this is under consultations, and we are looking forward to adopt it by the governmental decision. And I have a list of regulations. Yeah, and we can share this information with you, and what is the status at the moment of transposing these regulations and directives into our legislation. So you will have this information also from the ministries, I am sure, Ministry of Energy and Ministry of Environment, but we can discuss with you the process and how the Parliament is engaged in this process. Thank you very much.
The one from
this one, okay. Yeah, thanks a lot, Chairwoman. Thanks a lot, Chairman, honorable members of Parliament. It's really a great pleasure to be here with you. And I apologize for being late. The day started with an early meeting with the Prime Minister already, and since then we have been not managed to catch up with certain delays. So it is indeed the main purpose of me and my colleague Dennis, whom you may know, to be here today to not only debrief you on where in the eyes of the energy community Moldova stands. Energy community is a group, a family of 10 parties, so we always have kind of a comparative, not to say a competitive view, but also on engaging in a discussion with you on many of the things that you have been already raising, and I had the impression that part of what I have to tell to you has already been anticipated by you, so it's great that we can probably move straight to a discussion, a dialogue on where we see Moldova at this given moment in time and where Moldova may, to some extent, should also move, because as a member of the energy community, of course, this means nothing else but being fully integrated into the European Union, its policy, its laws. There is in energy community probably not much that separates Moldova still from full accession. And I think that's also where I would like to start, to congratulate you on how you got out of this turbulent year or turbulent 1.5 years. Indeed, that was rewarded by also being granted candidate status. It is not something that has only to do with the geopolitical circumstances, but definitely is based on the merit of Republic of Moldova, and by that I mean not only the government but the Parliament definitely taking the key and central role. There were so many laws that needed to be adopted, and we all know without these laws reform would not be possible. So this is really a moment to praise your work, and this is, I think, well reflected also in our report. We have been engaging with Parliament, with government, with all institutions of the Republic for quite some time, ever since it joined the energy community. We always saw Moldova as a country that deserves special focus. We always saw the vulnerability of the country in the energy sector. We would have never imagined that this vulnerability turns into a real crisis like the one that we have experienced. It did, not only for Moldova, that affected all countries in Europe, and every country dealt with it in its own way. But I think what we can say for Moldova, and in particular with this full exposure, being at the geopolitical crossroads of the events, that you managed, and again, that's not something that was to be taken for granted before. Quite the contrary, you managed to come out stronger out of this crisis than the events would have suggested. And I think now it's our common work ahead, because we will not rest on our laurels, to make also these changes stable, and to make sure that we don't fall back into the same situation of being exposed, of being vulnerable, but that this strength will continue and will be something that Moldova can build on in taking its further steps towards accession, its further steps also towards integration. And I think integration is also a key word. By the work that you are doing, you're not only improving and developing the conditions in Moldova for the better, but also have taken a decision jointly with the government to integrate with Europe, to integrate also with Europe's energy systems. Synchronization was an important technical step, and probably certainly an irreversible technical step in that direction. And it's now our mission to further support you in that, with two main objectives, I would say. The first one is to foster the integration, to make sure that the country, that Moldova, actually also gets the benefits out of this integration and doesn't see it as something that adds stress on the country. But it's also something that Moldova, its institutions, but also its population, its industry, take the utmost benefit from, and there is benefit. And at the same time also responding to another big challenge that we may sometimes not see as visible as the geopolitical challenges. That's the challenge of climate change and decarbonization. You mentioned it, Chairwoman. Which deserves our full attention, and not only for contributing to the fight against global fight against climate change, but also to make sure that out of this immense transformation that the entire world is going through now, again, Moldova comes out as a winner and is not a country left behind. I think that is one of the big challenges now on a global level, and every economy is facing. And we see the last few months and years as very encouraging for Moldova actually to perform well and to make sure that this is a transition to the better. We have also underlined this support that we are ready and willing to give Moldova by creating an office here already last year. That's something which is rarely done. We have one in Ukraine, and now also since a couple of weeks in Georgia. And definitely we see that this is a token and actually a very instrumental sign of that we want to be there on a daily basis, not only visiting every once in a while and reporting on our implementation report, but working with the executive institutions, including the regulatory authority, but also with you in making change for the better. Our person here in Moldova, so far the only one, but hopefully that will change as well, is Denis Tumoruk. So I assume and very much hope that also a constant dialogue can take place. He's very experienced and also has turned out to be an agent of change in and for Moldova. Maybe that also relates to the fact that the role of the energy community and its secretariat has been changing due to this war in Ukraine. We have been, of course, focusing a lot of our attention after 22nd February last year on supporting Ukraine in a very hands-on manner by supporting the repairment and the provision of supply of equipment of a system which is constantly being attacked. We have established a fund, for instance, but at the same time we also thought that helping Ukraine in this situation is not only hands-on support, or does not only comprise hands-on support, but that they also helped by having a close eye on what all the institutions are doing there, even in wartime, what kind of changes are being made to the legislation, what kind of changes are being made to the market, etc. Because we believe that this role of the energy community is and will be important once recovery will come and once investors, public and private, need to feel comfortable to go and invest. And if we translate this into the Moldovan situation, then that's probably also an important feature of the energy community's presence, to support Moldova also in the sense of giving everybody who will come to invest, and I think the conditions are all there, the assurances that what the country is doing is not only to enter into commitments, but to living up to them, and to apply them in a daily basis, on a daily basis, so that money spent in Moldova is money well spent. This goes both for short-term investments and for longer-term investments. For short-term investments, we have also set up, and President von der Leyen, when she was here, announced it, what we call the rescue scheme for Moldova. This is something I think we jointly need to fill with life by making the case that Moldova's integration into the European market, all the efforts that Moldova is and will be undertaking in order to make that happen, requires the support and also the financial support by Western governments, by international financial institutions, and we look forward also to engage with Parliament much more on this in this outreach and making this case very clear. You have been doing something that is a clear orientation towards Europe, towards the European family. Now the family also needs to play its part and support in the short term to cover the burden that you and the Moldovan population has been taken, but also to make sure that investment follows up in the mid and long term. Now, if I may just go through this presentation, Dennis, if we could move maybe to the next slide already, and the next one. Indeed, Moldova's achievements have been very impressive over the last year. It has, and if you go to the next slide, in this competitive spirit in comparing Moldova with all other contracting parties to the energy community, you see that no country has advanced so much in its rating as Moldova did. So others who have started in a different position have made maybe incremental progress, but in Moldova, the reforms in this stressful period has really picked up, and there's a couple of issues that have already been highlighted by you, Chairman Marian, and also from the environmental and climate side, but I may repeat them again. We have an advancement in the energy sector reforms, both in electricity and gas, and also on the climate side, which at the same time made sure that this is not happening on the back of customers. Country established a scheme and a fund open to support vulnerable customers, which kind of cushioned the price impact of this crisis, which the crisis had on all European countries, but on Moldova in particular. There were decisions taken which made the reform, which rooted them deeply into law, and that's thanks to your work, and I think also we have received the feedback from international donors that this is actually something that's been appreciated. In the electricity area, it was possible to build on what has already been achieved previously. Something as trivial, one may think, or as technical as market rules have provided the basis for exchange with Ukraine in electricity. backup that was needed at the time when the electricity from MGRES was not as certain as it is today. Also provided the basis for engaging in exports and in particular imports from the West, from Romania, and that's something we need to revisit because evidently the crisis has led to maybe the upper hand of the executive in rather managing in a hands-on manner the electricity market operation and also trade. We need to, that's one of the examples where we need to stabilize this by good regulation and by good legislation as well to make sure that we will indeed come to a situation where crisis is not the guidance of our day-to-day operations, but where the market takes over. This is also will also be reflected in further steps to be performed under the in the electricity area. Maybe we move directly to the electricity chapter, Dennis, in order to save us some time also for the discussion. In electricity, the upcoming challenge is now also to certify, and that means restructuring to some extent the electricity market operator, Moldelectrica. We need to, and that will be something I think that will be discussed here in Parliament also in much detail. We need to follow up on the decision of the Ministerial Council of 2022 to apply all European rules pertaining to electricity, from the top-level directives and regulations that require changes to the law to the so-called network codes, which need to be implemented by ANRE and by the network operator in a manner which goes beyond only reforming the market, the electricity market in Moldova. This will essentially mean, once transposed here in national legislation, that Moldova will in an irreversible manner be part of the European market, part of the European governance structure. It is not only in this maybe typical one-way street direction that the European Union exports its rules and Moldova implements it. This is something also qualitatively new. It means that also the European Union and its structures, from the network operators to the market participants, take upon themselves the obligation to integrate Moldova and to treat all its players as if they were European Union member states players. And that is a development which definitely depends on your work in Parliament in the course of this year, which will also mean that we get a boost of reforming, of improving the market in Moldova, because Moldova is a small country, and by being integrated in the big European internal energy market, the largest in the world, we will see benefits, welfare benefits, which will be felt by consumers and by the companies alike. So this is something that we look forward to in working with you on legislation that is meant to achieve this integration and at the same time improve some of the still existing shortcomings in Moldova. For instance, the so-called REMIT regulation that is increasing transparency and preventing abuses needs to be transposed. I think we will also see amendments or proposed amendments to the electricity law in this respect relatively soon. We also need to look into tax issues because one of the obstacles for full market integration is also differences in tax treatment which affect traders and suppliers from Moldova and to Moldova and may hamper imports into the country. So that's also something where we look forward to Parliament's, be it your committee or another committee, very active engagement to make sure that a level playing field, an internal market is also created by removing taxation obstacles. We need to also do more to support the completion of the infrastructure and to make sure that European financial support can also be devoted to infrastructure projects. There is a new so-called 10E regulation in the European Union which allows it now that projects between countries like Moldova and the EU are also financed directly from EU budget, and this should be transposed as well. And as I said previously, we will have to make sure that what was put in the market rules, what is an achievement of those market rules to achieve a situation where balancing is actually possible, where the rules and responsibilities of providing and stabilizing a balanced Moldovan market are clearly defined, that this is also fostered by the law, that each player in the market has their own role and their responsibilities as well that they will assume, and that on this basis trade both with Ukraine and also in the Western direction is possible. This will have to be complemented also by the allocation of capacity on all borders, joint allocation of capacity, so not only Moldelectrica doing it alone, but together with its European partners, and that's all part of the package. We have reason to believe that the export ban that Ukraine imposed during the war may be lifted relatively soon, and then there is also the possibility, given that these preconditions are there, to get alternative electricity, potentially even cheaper electricity from Ukraine. Ukraine, of course, will remain also after the war a country that needs a lot of support, and by contrast, that's something we discussed with the Prime Minister, for instance, this morning. It means that Moldova can really be a stabilizing factor. Moldova's electricity market can be a stabilizing factor between the West and Ukraine, can, for instance, develop into a good balancing and flexibility hub, providing services also to a rather unstable system in Ukraine by increasing its storage capacity inter alia, but also by providing a good market and system framework that we are promoting. Maybe last thing on the electricity market is that this integration will now start very soon, potentially even before the transposition, by appointing what is called in technical terms a nominated electricity market operator, so a power exchange that will be the focal point for coupling markets with the neighbors, and I hope we will relatively soon see applications to carry out this function for the market of Moldova, which will allow not only the development of a liquid short and spot market in Moldova, but also its swift coupling with not only the immediate neighbors, but the entire European Union. If we can move on a bit, I would go directly to the regulatory authorities and competition authorities, state aid authority. That's also something that we are monitoring and supporting. We are working very closely with ANRE, the energy regulator in particular, the independence of which is an important element of the whole energy sector and has proved also helpful in the past. They will have to take important decision very soon again on unbundling. I already mentioned Moldelectrica, gas unbundling, maybe even more sensitive. We'll come to that in a minute. And for this, we need a strong and independent regulatory authority, which is accountable to you. And in this context, I would maybe just like to mention one thing, and that's the selection of a new director at ANRE, which you have been carrying out, and which has been concluded. So this is a process that we also look forward to, that leads to the appointment of a new candidate, or of the successful candidate very soon, to make sure that there's no empty chairs in ANRE, because we will need their full dedication. On gas, I think we're all aware of the sensitivity of the gas sector. In gas, we have some of the challenges that I think you know better than I do. We have, of course, a diversification. We have seen a diversification away from being dependent on one single source. Right now, Russian gas is used only for electricity generation on the left bank. And we have also seen progress in crucial aspects such as virtual reverse flow, so-called backhaul, which was not an easy process and is not entirely over, but it opened new access routes for Moldova, new access to alternative gas. And it was one of the construction sites that we also had to work very intensively with the Ministry of Finance. We do hope that the Ministry of Finance, both on this file and also on files like the VAT, as much as all other institutions in Moldova, is aware that we have to all work in a proactive manner together in order to get the conditions right which strengthen Moldova's security of supply and provide further benefit for customers and citizens. In this respect, maybe it is also important to mention the engagement and the possible engagement of Moldova through Energocom in the joint gas purchases platform that has been set up by the European Union. So that is another example where Moldova joins the European family now in purchasing gas jointly, which of course increases the negotiation power. And we do hope that we can link this rescue scheme that I have mentioned in the beginning also with the purchase of gas, and to get donor support in facilitating the purchase of alternative gas in the future by Moldova. Now, of course, what is upcoming in the immediate period, in the next couple of months, is the unbundling of Moldova gas. This is something that you have led the groundwork for in the gas law that was adopted last year. An important process, and we'll be discussing this also further with the ministry and the ANRE, who plays an important role. That's why they need all hands on deck there, where we are in a situation where the country is not in line with the European rules because of the lack of unbundling. Moldova gas is not properly unbundled. The gas law as I mentioned, sets a procedure in motion on how this deadlock can be overcome, and we very much look forward to working with all of you, with Andre, with the ministry, with evidently the operator as well as alternative operators, to make this unbundling happen. It would close an important gap in the energy community, because there's not many countries that haven't finished the unbundling and the corporate restructuring of the operators. Otherwise, again, the past year has brought a lot of improvements, a lot of progress. Energocom's establishment, both in electricity, we have been supporting them also with technical assistance, but in gas as well, has led to a situation where Moldova's diversification has increased, where Moldova's situation is indeed much more robust as it used to be in the past. Now let's maybe move, Dennis, to what we call sustainable development, as well as environment and climate implementation. That's the second mission of the energy community, and it is very positive, very encouraging to hear that this falls here on very fruitful and very fertile ground. Chairwoman, thanks a lot for elaborating on the state of play and the advancements that Moldova, and through your work, has been doing. Indeed, we see the development of energy efficiency in the legal framework, the law being close to adoption as very, very important. Also, we stand ready, and that's what Dennis is doing on a day-to-day basis to support the establishment of the agency and the fund. The focus right now is also on renewables. It's, I think, a very good sign that Moldova does not only focus on big-scale renewables, but also on decentralized renewables, and has been very successful in doing so. That's not only greening the sector, but also providing more resilience. We probably have to look into renewables much more when we look into the energy mix of the country, also of the existing operators. I'm thinking of district heating, which is currently run on heavy fuel oil. That's not a sustainable solution. So that would have to change to an alternative fuel very fast, that is linked, and I hope we can discuss that further also with a project and ambitions of Moldova in forestation, in sustainable forestry that would allow also the increase of the biomass potential in the country, biomass and biofuel as well, which in turn may open even export opportunities. But also, of course, the use of renewables in electricity is at a decisive point right now. You will be discussing soon the law on renewables here in Parliament. It is quite advanced already. It will be subject to public consultation very soon. It provides, in our view, a very fair balance between the impact on the national market, also on the electricity market, and the rights and assurances against risks of investors. So if adopted, and to the extent you will agree with it, that would create a very good basis for starting the next step, which would be auctions for not only, or not anymore, the feed-in tariff-based support that we know from the past, but market-based auction scheme, which is make sure that support does not exceed what investors actually need, that the burden on Moldova, the financial burden is kept at a minimum, and I think once that you have decided to adopt that law, we will need to work very closely all together to make sure that this first round of auctions is being done well and that it yields the results. It's good times to invest in renewables. It's good time to attract investment. We have tomorrow a conference on that as well. And if we work from all sides, we can make, indeed, in this particular area of the economy, we can underline how attractive Moldova is for international and also national investors. This is something where we would also like to support the whole country further in facilitating as much as possible. There's a big discussion going on now in Europe on permitting. So if it is possible also to define in a more structured manner, we'll discuss that with the Ministry of Environment, the zones where investment can take place and where permitting may go smoothly. I think we can underline this situation and the asset of Moldova in providing investors also with the fast deployment of renewables, not only an appropriate support, but also to get projects installed as fast as possible. We also will be working together with you, probably Andre, on making sure that guarantees of origin certificates can be issued for renewable electricity and also other renewable energy, which will make sure that Moldova can not only be an attractive location for investors, but that these investors can also sell their renewables electricity at the best possible conditions, potentially under long-term contracts to private companies who are hungry these days all over Europe to get renewable electricity. If we want to do this and to follow up on the sustainable and green part of the Moldovan reform activities, I think we would all agree that good planning is very important. Good planning requires laying the groundwork. You already mentioned the MRV package, so to making sure that reporting, monitoring and verification of greenhouse gas emissions is in place, but then also planning of the whole transition as such. And the best available instrument there is the National Energy and Climate Plan, which comes together in the energy community with the targets, decarbonization targets adopted by Moldova and by the Ministerial Council of the Energy Community last year. So this plan will make sure that we will not only decide on the policies and measures that are needed to achieve the targets, and that goes beyond climate, that includes energy security, that includes reforming of the energy sector, but also that this is done in a robust manner, sustained by modeling and data, and that we are not just producing a strategy that is forgotten the moment that it is drafted, but to produce a very meaningful master plan for Moldova's transition. And one of the important elements that has already been mentioned by you and that will be very much in the focus of our energy community work this year is carbon pricing. Carbon pricing important not only because it is a key element in getting the transition right, it's also something that protects the industry against a measure that's currently being discussed and very soon adopted in the European Union, the carbon border adjustment mechanism, a tax sort of a customs levy where exporters into the European market will have to pay the carbon price not to the Moldovan budget, but to the European budget. So we believe it is much smarter to follow up in a flexible manner, in a creative manner, in a manner that will lead Moldova and other contracting parties on the path towards an emissions trading scheme, and use the revenues in the country rather than paying it to somewhere else, because definitely revenues will be needed. And let me conclude on this note and maybe underline once again how important it is that we work on all of this together. I'm very happy that we have managed over the past years and in the past period to establish these close relationships, which are not only linked to annual visits, but should lead to processes where you not only involve and ask for advice and support our local representatives, Representative Dennis, but feel free to reach out for the opinion of the energy community, not only on compliance issue, but also on best European practice, etc. We have quite some knowledge by now in the Secretariat, and we're happy to share them, and keep this spirit of open discussion on how best solutions can be found to problems. Some problems are unique in Moldova, but many problems are similar to problems that other countries have been facing. So I think in this family, in this community, we can learn a lot from each other. And by this, I'd like to thank you once again and conclude this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dirk. We really appreciate your support and feedback, just to be sure that the government and Parliament are fully aligned on our goals. We have a couple fundamental pillars based on which we work. One is energy resilience. We do not want anymore to depend on only one source. Second is improving energy efficiency, particularly on construction and residential building. Third is increasing the capacity or the share of the renewables, and fourth is, making sure there is like an open market and decent competition rules where everybody can work. So these are kind of the fundamental pillars on the long term that we are. And the fifth, sorry, I forgot, the decarbonization. That's yes, 2050 zero net. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a nice goal. We'll make sure we're going to accomplish it. These are 5 fundamental pillars based on which we will do our work and with the government. And we noted down the things that we need to work on more. With the contest of Andre noted, we should have a resolution of the contest by next week. The REMIT regulation, the TNE regulation, and also the Environment Committee will monitor everything that is related to Energy Efficiency Agency and renewables. And yeah, thank you so much. That's it from my side, and we'll definitely keep in touch. And also with Denis, we will definitely communicate further. Thank you.
I would also like to thank you for the presentation and for the very interesting insights you brought into discussion on behalf of my colleagues from the Environmental Committee. What is important here to say is that Moldova never has run through this process, and as Rado was saying before, we were dependent only on one source. Energy was a part of different ministries, and we never had a ministry which would work on the energy independence of Moldova. Now the whole Europe is living in a different reality, and we all need to work together in order to overcome this energy crisis. And yes, not only overcome the energy crisis, but meet this goal of decarbonization, yes, by 2050, which is very challenging, but with innovation, digitalization, and all the innovative solutions, we will be able to do it. And with the support from the development partners and from the energy community from the EU countries. And here we need to mention one very important point, taking into account that Moldova has a candidate status and we have engagements in the fields that we're discussing today. Building the institutional capacities of the country is really very important, and assuring the country with all the important expertise in order to fulfill all these engagements related to the transposition of regulations, directives into our legislation is crucial. And here we will need your support, your expertise. We will need to finalize the formation of the Ministry of Energy with the professional employees. As far as I understood from the Minister of Energy, we have some very good employees which will be employed during the next period of time. But we all understand how this integration process was organized in the countries which became members of EU, and how important is to pay attention to the institutional capacities. Otherwise, it will be just on paper, and we did not mention all the support which now is discussed for the Republic of Moldova in the energy sector, but you're definitely aware about it. Some of it needs to be channeled to the energy efficiency sector, because we all understand that not only bundling gas or electricity, yes, we are finalizing, is important, but energy efficiency, which will bring us a lot of additional value. And here we really need to have agency for energy efficiency and renewables, the projects which will be implemented in the country. I did not mention the program, LIFE program, yes, EU LIFE program, through which we can have projects, but it is just a small part with the energy, green energy included in there, but the agency is very important, and we understand that you had a discussion with the Minister of Energy, so we will be promoting this message and starting to work on these projects. So institutional capacities, expertise, knowledge, and day-by-day work with the new staff which will be engaged in the Ministry of Energy, and working together with Ministry of Environment and other institutions which will be important to be engaged in this process. And the Parliament of the Republic of Moldova, which will adopt the legislation. So thank you very much, and looking forward to work with you.
Thank you.